Gute. So let's start with the Magnavox Odyssey. So we have 1 and number 2. So what is better than to have two Magnavox Odyssey? The rifle, or no, to have a third one, and the third one is actually the one which was sold in Mexico. But nevertheless, of course, we also have the shooting gallery and an extra gun. So that's about it. Maybe I forgot something. So here we also have some of the extra games which were sold, I think, like a few months or a few years later than during the production run. So I will tidy everything up, and then we will go a little bit over the history, and then I will also like plug the thing to a little CRT, and I will show you what the console is all about. So when you research about the history of the console, you basically have different options. So the first of all would be like the history of the video game industry from Leonard Herman, which has like a small piece or a small article about the Magnavox Odyssey, but the whole history and how everything started with the video game industry in general. I would recommend actually the video games in the beginning from Ralph Baer himself. So he basically describes from 1966, where he had the idea for a television game system, and how he basically then with a colleague from his company made like an underground project that they made different like prototypes or something like that. And so first I drew a line on a TV screen, and then they basically had like 7 iterations. And this led to the brown box, which then was basically taken over by Magnavox and was changed a little bit and marketed a little bit different, and was then released as the Magnavox Odyssey. And then we have 2 like children books more. We can have a look inside, but they are basically just for kids, about the guy who invented home video games. But this is basically when you start to research about the history. I mean, also the Wikipedia article or something like that you can start, but actually there are so many things you can discover, and most probably, as I said, the best source is probably this book by Ralph Baer himself. So here we have now some of the children's book, and you can already see there are different ways of telling a story. Ralph Baer was born in Germany. He moved to America. Ralph was born in Germany and he had to flee of Nazi Germany. Okay, basically, I think the target audience for both of those books is basically different. So this book is probably like for children until 6 years or something like that, and this is probably more for maybe like 10 or 12-year-old children. So it's probably fine that the one neglects the reason why he moved to America, and the other one is basically mentioning it. So when you look inside the book, you can see the brown box, which was the prototype or the 7th iteration from Ralph Baer and his colleague, which was then used for the mass production of the Odyssey. So you can also see inside how everything is soldered together without any kind of like PCB or something like that. And you can see a golf attachment, which was also planned by Ralph Baer and his colleague, but this was not taken over by Magnavox when they did the mass production. But Magnavox did add some other stuff, which we will see when we look at the contents of the box of the final product, basically. So yeah, let's have a look at the box. So this is how the box, the US box, actually looked like from the console. You can also see that here is like a darker part. There was like some kind of banner or something like that, which is gone over the years now. Let's have a look at the side of the console. So on the side you can see the individual games which are presented here on the box. So we have table tennis, hockey, something like Simon Says, roulette, or also like the US states that you have to guess some of the US states or something like that. Yeah, maybe it's also a good way or like a good time now to discuss the elephant in the room, basically. So is this like an electronic board game? Is it like a tele game, as we would call it like in Europe? Or like a Pong console? So I would consider this as the first Pong console, because all the stuff which was added, like which makes it more like a board game, this was added by Magnavox and was not like intended to be added by Ralph Baer. So Magnavox did that to push up the price, basically, I think to $100. And so that's why I will focus mainly also on the Pong console stuff, or basically on the Pong game. There are other games inside. I will shortly describe them, but as I said, my focus will be mainly on Pong then. In case you wondered how the Mexican version of the Magnavox Odyssey looks like, you can see the box is not very different. So there's basically like a sticker over the Odyssey font, which now says Odyssea. But other than that, the box and also the contents are not different. It's basically like a translated version of the Odyssey. So the manual is translated, and also the game cards are translated. But other than that, it's not very special actually. When you look inside, it basically looks like, or this part especially looks like a board game. So we have here some boards, some stickers, some board game cards, some cubes, and some roulette chips. And then we have the actual game cards, which we need to set up or turn on or use for the console, depending on which game we are using. And if we look in the second layer of the box, then we can see the console itself, so the base unit, a TV cable, which does not directly go to the TV, but is connected to the switch box, because this switch box actually goes to the TV and can also be used to switch between like the antenna program or the UHF program and the console. Optionally, you could buy like a power supply. Originally, the console was delivered with some batteries and the two hand controllers. So one controller for player 1 and one for player 2, basically, and some some paper money also, which were used for the roulette game. So another overview about the stuff which was added is so as you can see here, some kind of like a board regarding like the football game, some US map for the states game, some game cards. The most important thing is actually the manual, which we have a look inside just a minute, and then some kind of warranty notice and some kind of like how to get it to work on your own TV, which might not work at the first try. So the manual contains some instructions for each game, and it has also like an information which game card you need for which game. So it's quite important that you have the manual, but you can also find it online if you don't have it. But there's also a section how to set up the whole console and attach it to your TV and calibrate everything. But so that's why the manual is quite helpful, especially for the time. You can see that they had put some effort into describing every step thoroughly, that you can set it up by yourself and play the game. And if that wouldn't be enough, they also included some plastic overlays which you could put over your CRT, such that you could add some color or grid or something like that. So in the case of the US states game, you could put that over your screen, and with the cursor basically you can mark the state you have as an answer or something like that. And so there were a big and a small version of this, and you could put it in front of the CRT. We will also do that with the Pong game, but basically I will not use that much. One thing to check for those old consoles is to check actually for the battery compartment if there are any like corrosion or something like that. because if somebody left like 40 years or something like that the batteries inside, you most likely have corrosion on the battery contacts and you cannot use it with the batteries anymore. So you can only rely then on using the power supply. To connect the Odyssey to a 90s CRT, you need different things. So originally it was released with the cable and a switch box, which is basically just a switch to switch between the game and the TV program. And this was then connected to the terminals, the antenna terminals from the CRT. But to use it on a more recent or like 90s CRT, you need some kind of like an adapter. So for the European TVs, you would need this. This is a 300 ohm to 75 ohm adapter, and this is the same for the US basically, because in the US you have a different RF connector than we in Germany and Europe. And the switchbox was also released in a plastic version, but this was just released for the later revisions, like the Pong consoles Odyssey 200, 300, and 400. And what you also sometimes find is like a modded TV cable, which directly, in this case now, connects to an American RF connector. This can work, but most likely you get a bad picture, so you really need those 300 to 75 ohm adapters to connect and get a good picture out of the Odyssey. So for the power, you can either use 6C cells, or you could also buy the power supply. But so for us Europeans, we have to be aware that so this is only meant for the US sockets. So this will not work in Europe, for example, and also it's like specified for 110 volts. So we need like a step-down converter to convert the 220 volt down to 110 volt, because otherwise we could either fry the power supply or worse, the console actually. So now let's attach it to a TV and let's check out the Pong game. So this is how a consumer CRT in mid-90s would look like from the back. So we have our RF connector, which was used for the TV program as well as some of the earlier consoles, and our good old friend, the Euroscard. So in the beginning, all the consoles were basically attached to the RF connector, and then you also had a switch, for example, in the for the Super Nintendo, that you could switch between the Super Nintendo and the TV program. But this looks quite different than the one you had in the US. The same connector that you use in the US for the RF connection is basically just used for satellite and cable program in Europe, or at least in Germany. But now let's attach the console. So everything is set up now. So the console is attached to the power supply and also to the switch box, and the switch box to the TV. The controllers are attached to the console, and also the game card 1 is inserted. So this game card, the console itself, has no like power switch or something like that. The game card acts like a power switch as well as like an array of switches inside the console, which basically tell the console, do I need just the left player icon, the right player icon, do I need a ball, or like a horizontal line to separate the game field or something like that. So this game card acts as like a bunch of switches, so to say. And the first thing we have to do is, of course, we have to do a channel search. So let me do that. So we now have to find the so channel 3 and channel 4. So this console also invented the channel 3 and channel 4. So in Europe, this is a little bit different. So it's not really like channel 3 or 4, but we should be able to find it. So let's wait a minute until it found the right channel. And there we have it. So the first thing, let me put the volume down. The third thing is we probably should like mute the TV, because the Magnavox Odyssey doesn't have any sound which is transmitted between the console and the TV, so it will generate some static there. So you probably want to mute the TV. Yeah, and that's basically it. And I mean, the first thing what you can see is how clean like an RF picture can look like. I mean, an RF picture can actually look like as good as a composite video signal. So everything is set up, it's working. The TV has found the right channel. So let me just share some insights about the actual ping pong game in this case. So let me show you the controls of the game controller. So I'm the left square now. I can use one knob to change the vertical position of the player icon. I can use another one to change the horizontal position of the player icon. And then there's the third one, which I can use to change, to cut the ball basically after it had left my icon. But this is only really working when after the ball hit my icon. So it remembers that only in this short time, until it hits the other icon, that I can change the direction of the ball. And then there's a fourth button, which I can use to reset or return the ball after it went out of the play field. Yeah, and that's basically it. So those are all the functions you can use to control the game. So we will now also have a look at the game card 2. So this is table tennis, and game card 2 we will use with the overlay. So the horizontal line in the middle will vanish because we will use the overlay. So it is a different game card because it has to tell the console that no horizontal line in the middle has to be used. So I have now attached the overlay and inserted game card 3. So what you can see now is first of all, so even the small overlay is too big for my CRT, but you can see how it would look like. So the overlay is actually like a little bit of transparent or translucent, and you can see that the glowing icons are still visible under the overlay. Other than that, so you can see that game card 3 actually really tells the console not to generate this horizontal line, because this is now generated or drawn by the overlay, so we don't need it actually. Yeah, and that's about it. So now you could play like this version of Pong or tennis in this case. So there are other game cards, for example, where no ball is even generated. So you can play like a cat and mouse game where the two players can catch each other. But I didn't want to show all of the games. It's basically the whole idea and the Pong variants which I wanted to show, because we will also see that in the next videos. So maybe the only thing which I should mention is that you should be careful that you put the right icon on the right side. So when you can see when I would change the icons, so the right and the left player, and then I would basically ask for a new ball, you can see that it immediately hits again and goes outside of the field. So you have to take care that player 1 is always on the left side and player 2 is always on the right side. So my recommendation would be that you like first insert one controller into the player 1 port and make sure that the player is on the left side, and then you insert the second controller and make sure that the second icon, which is then generated, is on the right side, such that you can really play the game, because otherwise the game might not be much fun. But that's about it, I would say, regarding the demonstration of this Pong version, and let's wrap up a little bit. So to complete the overview of the console, I also wanted to show you the controller ports and everything. So this is the controller port for like player 1. Then there's a dial for the horizontal position of the horizontal line, so you could move that from left to right to adjust it to your TV. Then there's a connector for the rifle, which was sold later as a separate add-on. Then we have the TV game cord port, and this game cord is actually just used by the Magnavox Odyssey consoles, so you will not find that anywhere else. So you probably don't have any luck if there's no cable included in your set. Of course, you could mod the console, but this would be like an additional effort. Then we have like a second knob or potentiometer to change the speed of the ball, and a controller port for player 2. If you want to know how the console is actually working, so you can find online the Magnavox service manual, which has like a block diagram where you can see how everything internally is built up. And you can also find a picture of the inside of the console, so how everything is built up basically inside the console. I mean, we will also have a look inside the console, but this will probably take some time. So this is better than nothing, I would say. And the best thing is actually that there is like a circuit diagram included, so you can actually see how everything is really like wired up inside. I mean, mainly this was for Magnavox like technicians or something like that when you were at the customer, and it also has some like reference voltages or something like that. So if you would need to repair something, you would really know where to check and in which of the modules there is the error for to be fixed or something like that. And actually you could call this like a 2-bit console in my opinion, because you can see here they have like two flip-flops which can hold a 1-bit value. So 1 bit is actually to decide if the ball goes from right to left or from left to right, and the other one is for this English control, because this control can only be used after the ball has hit your player icon. So that's the 2 bits which are stored in this 2 flip-flops in this case. So that's everything about the Magnavox Odyssey. We had a look at the console and mainly the Pong variants of the console, such that we can compare it to the later Pong consoles which were released after 1972. And I will also make a short video about the rifle and one of the extra games that we have a look at, the extra games which were released a few months after the console. Yeah, but if you research online for the first console, it was like neither a hit nor a flop, but it's to be considered the first home video game system which was released to the public. Yeah, and that's about it, and then we will see each other in the next video. Hier können wir jetzt nochmal entsprechend, was ich eben gesagt habe, die braunen